This is Rabbi Yehuda Levin. In light of the fact that New York State Legislature and Governor Patterson, as well as militant homosexual activists, are trying to ram through a same gender marriage measure, which is imminent, it behooves us in the Orthodox community to examine what is the history of the Gedolim Yisrael of yesteryear on the homosexual agenda. Looking back, the first Gadol that we see that dealt with this issue was way back in the late 1970s when the Pesach Hador Rav Moshe Feinstein was informed by a traditional Jew, not an Orthodox Jew, who came off the street into his Riverside Drive apartment. And when Rabbi Feinstein was informed of what was going on in Dade County, where they were making a homosexual rights measure, he personally instructed Rabbi Hirsch Ginsburg Yibad L'Chaim of the Agudas HaRabbanim to write a letter in English, which he signed with the name Moses Feinstein in English, which was sent to each and every county commissioner in Dade County, vigorously opposing homosexual rights legislation. Several years later, I myself was very involved in seeing to it that a letter went to Rav Moshe, signed by Rav Avigdor Miller Zitzal, the Debretziner Rav, and Yibad L'Chaim, the Linzer Rav, who is the father-in-law of the present Klosenberger Rebbe. This letter outlined a lot of the damages of homosexual rights legislation. Rav Moshe Feinstein responded with a very strong letter, which once again he wanted specifically, for whatever the reason, not on Agudas Yisrael stationery, but on Agudas Rabbanim stationery, and he had it signed by himself and Yibad L'Chaim Rav Hirsch Ginsburg as the Menahel, as the executive director of the Agudas HaRabbanim, in which he said it's a chayv kadosh mutal al kol echad va'echad, it's an absolute obligation on all who heed his words to fill the city hall rotunda for all the days of the hearings on so-called homosexual rights legislation, laharis golui l'chol ha'amim, to show explicitly to the entire world, l'chol ha'amim, not just to Jews, she'am hasem sonei to'eva, that the people of God, the Jewish people, abhor abominations. So this was a very, very strong response, a very strong attitude that Rav Moshe Feinstein took, in light of the fact that he was a European rabbi and normally he eschewed, he was opposed to any protests against the government. That was Rav Moshe Feinstein. Now let's look at the Sha'ar Mitzyanim B'Halacha, who I had write a letter. I asked him a question and he wrote a halachic response in his own handwriting in which he indicated that government funding and the need for government funding is no heter. It is not permissible to use that as an excuse to go easy on the politicians who promote any type of homosexual agenda. And at that time, I would say that neither of these Gedolim had any idea that the agenda would lead to actual same-gender marriage. Let's move on to the Debretziner Rav. In the year Tafshin Mem Daled, which is almost a quarter of a century ago, I received a 2-page handwritten letter from the Debretziner Rav stating how we shouldn't support, endorse, or in any way honor, vote for, of course, politicians who are promoting a homosexual agenda, and he called on people to sign up to be members of an organization that would fight against this immorality. On Shabbos Shuvah of Tafshin Mem Daled, one of the holiest times of the year, right before Yom Kippur, the Debretziner Rav took from me a lavender-colored brochure entitled Gay and Proud, which was being distributed in Brooklyn Public Libraries in the children's section, including in the Borough Park Library, right off 13th Avenue in the low 40s. The Debretziner Rav took that and he used that as an exhibit in his Shabbos Tshuva Drasha because he took this extremely, extremely seriously. The Kasher V'Rav, another tremendous gadol, was also outspoken in his opposition to the homosexual agenda. And when Mayor Kosh was running for mayor in 1985 for re-election, at that particular time I was running a token symbolic race on the right to life line. which was covered by the New York Times and got me headlines in the Daily News and the New York Post as opposing Mayor Koch because of his endorsement of the homosexual agenda and visiting a so-called homosexual synagogue in Greenwich Village. At that time, Mayor Koch was coming down to the Baba Rebbe's house for the inauguration of Baba Promenade and the new Baba Beis Medrash, and the Kasher sent his own family to oppose Mayor Koch, despite the fact that he was the mayor of New York, and despite the fact that he was doing certain favors for the Orthodox Jewish community. This did not stand in the way of the Kasher V'Rov and his manifest opposition to Mayor Koch, who was the mayor of the city. Similarly, the Sklener Rebbe, the previous Sklener Rebbe, was outspoken in his opposition to Mayor Koch and the politicians who supported the homosexual agenda. Additionally, in the early 80s, the Hisachtus HaRabbanim, the CRC, the Central Rabbinical Congress, their leadership, the late Papa, I think it was the Puparov, and the late Satmar Rebbe, and the Voidislav Rov, they all signed that it is prohibited to honor, support, or endorse politicians who support in any way and promote the homosexual agenda. This was simple gay rights, so-called, not to discriminate in housing and employment. We're not talking about homosexual adoption. We're not talking about homosexual marriage, which the Chazal tell us in Bereshis Rabbah, at the end of Parshas Bereshis, was the last straw before Hashem brought the deluge of Noach, the great floods. That was sealed and signed when people start to write marriage contracts for the same gender, man for his fellow man. So we see very, very clearly, my dear friends, that the Gedolim of yesteryear were very, very strongly against this. As a matter of fact, there was an Orthodox city councilman who, in the mid-'80s, went to Rev Yaakov Kamenetsky and attempted to get a heter for Rev Yaakov Kamenetsky not to be on the General Welfare Committee, to fight actively and to help lead the fight against the homosexual legislation at that time, which I say again was the easiest, the simplest, the lowest level of homosexual legislation. Rev Yaakov Kamenetsky refused to grant that and absolutely indicated to the councilman he has to fight. The councilman then turned to Rev Shach in Eretz Yisrael, hoping he would hear something different. In the Haggadah of Rev Shach, written by compiled by Rev Meir Valech, on the piece by Yorei Oshanu HaMitzrim, the author tells the story and indicates how Rav Shach said, no, you must fight this because it's going to impact on the community. And we in Israel, we in Eretz Yisrael owe you a special thank you, because whatever evil is enacted in America, after several years it comes across the Atlantic and it comes to Israel. And therefore we see clearly how seriously Rav Shach took this situation. So we have all these Gedolim from Hasidic community, from the Litvish community, and we know that some of the Sephardic rabbis in America, when they were approached by this, such as the late Syrian chief rabbi in America, Rabbi Yaakov Kassin, was also very, very opposed to this. And then suddenly we find a new situation. We find a situation where Agudas Israel of America basically goes through the motions, issues some press releases, but there was never public gatherings of the kind of Feinstein spoke about, public gatherings to demonstrate how much we abhor this. There was never Tehillim rallies called. This was never stressed in terms of voting, that Jews should vote a particular way. And therefore, we must say that basically there is no Messiah that says we should go light and easy and just do token things, a press release type situations. This is something which has no Masorah with the previous generation of Gedolim, all of whom I served, and of course that includes the late great Rev Avigdor Miller, whose yahrzeit is this very day that we are taping this. In a second video to follow this, I will continue to talk and to explain why there is such a shocking, startling difference between the Gedolim of yesteryear and their strong opposition to all things of the homosexual agenda